All right, tonight on Serious and Silliness Outcast, we have a special guest, Vincent Briatore from the YouTube channel Vincent Briatore TV. What's up, Vin? What's happening, man?
Hello, everyone. Hey, thank you for having me.
So we just had this conversation that we're both Italian and we're both Sicilian, actually, right?
Yeah, my father's from Palermo, so yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I know. That was pretty good. It's a small world, right? Like, who would know? But the first thing that I want to get into is you were very successful. You were extremely successful before you even started the YouTube channel. You had like cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, e-commerce ventures. Can you go into how you got into these businesses, what they are, and how you became so successful at them?
Sure. I mean, to be honest, and I appreciate you saying so successful. I mean, it was a struggle for a long time. I think it was really out of necessity. I didn't really feel like I had a lot of options. I dropped out of college. I
Mhm.
was working a lot of dead end jobs. And I think when I was younger, I loved computers. And just at some point, I finally said, I got to try something else. And, I started a marketing company. It was an SEO company. And I actually started doing it at home. I started getting a lot of clients, and I was like, "Hey, I can open an office." And then from that moment, once I got a taste of like having my own business, it was so
Mhm.
much more rewarding than working for someone else. And so from there, I had no other option. I was like, it's this or it's nothing. And I
Mhm.
think it was just failure after failure, but I still made money during the time before it failed. So I always had hope. Eventually, I got to just build something more stable.
Okay.
And you mentioned cryptocurrencies. I had like left Phoenix, sold my place, short sold it, and I had like 40 grand. And I just put most of it actually in Ethereum. This is back when it was maybe like $10, $15, I think around 11 really. And so it kind of just took off. And I was so passionate about it, I felt like it was really going to change the world. It's just naive. I was like, whoa, this is great. So I decided to make YouTube videos about it. And so that kind of followed along. And I became kind of a personality within the space as well as invested.
Ah, I see. Yeah, that's everybody seemed to have thought a few years back that cryptocurrency was going to be the new dollar.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't seem to turn out that way. I mean, I don't know much about it, but I know it didn't seem to really turn out that way.
Well, right now it's having, a rough time, but Ethereum still from when it was around where I bought it, like around $10, $11, it went up to $5,000. And so now
Oh,
it's around
that's yeah.
2,500. So
Yes,
it's a really
you
big
got
run.
in early. Yeah, you got in early. Okay, okay.
Definitely.
Can you explain what blockchain technology is?
Well, basically it's a database, it's a database that is shared by everyone and verified by everyone. So it's kind of like, an open database is basically the best way I can explain it. What's different about it is that, everybody has like a copy of this database. So that's how it's verified. You have to have a majority of people agree that a transaction happened, and that's how you kind of verify it. And so this decentralized aspect of it is the fact that the database is kind of everywhere. It's not centrally located. So it's not like, hey, I have a database and I'm recording transactions. There's no central database. Everybody has it. And when I say database, you could say ledger to make it a little bit simpler, just a ledger of transactions. It's not carried in any specific place. It's everywhere.
And what kind of transactions are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about any kind of transaction, but mostly, transferring crypto coins. So you would
Ah,
say
okay.
value. So I buy something from you, or you buy something from me, or I'm transferring money.
I
But
see. I see.
now it's also NFTs and all kind of other stuff.
Okay. And then e-commerce ventures.
Sure. So like that's funny how I got started. That's funny. So I heard everybody always, I don't know, you probably see them too, these people talking about how much money they made e-commerce. Like you see kids talking about, oh, they got Amazon stores and all this money. And I'm like, I'm out here doing it the hard way. So I was
Mhm.
like, because I ran blogs, I did, marketing, SEO, stuff like that. And I decided, man, let me try to do some e-commerce. So I went on Etsy. I don't know if you're familiar with Etsy.
Yeah.
It's a big
Yeah.
crafts kind of thing. I was like, I
Right.
guess I can start something on Etsy. And I had actually, and I always invest and I do things that I understand. That's like the first thing. I never try to do something because they say it's popular. It's if I understand and I want it. If I want to buy it, then maybe that's something I'll sell. And
Mhm.
this was I for one of my videos, I said I wanted to have like the plaques, the YouTube plaques,
Mhm.
like the 100,000 one, the
Yes,
1
the silver
million one, the
ones,
gold.
right.
And I was like, I wonder if you can just buy those because it's really hard to find them. So I was
Mhm.
Googling how, and then people make replicas, but it was so hard to find a decent replica. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make replicas and I'm going to put them as a crafts on Etsy. and I didn't make one.
I was gonna say, how the hell did you make one of those?
Well, I didn't. I put the ad that I was selling them first on Etsy, and immediately, like no advertisement, nothing, just flooded with orders all over the world. And I was like, I told my wife, I'm like, we got to go to Lowe's.
Wow.
Got the wood, we would cut it in the size, and then the first ones were made with wallpaper. Like I got a silver wallpaper and stuck it to it. We had like a little machine that would cut out the YouTube thing, and I would glue the letters by hand. So the first few people got, I swear, they got pieces of shit. I mean, I was sending these motherfuckers to Egypt, you know, like people ordering this
That's
stuff.
it's so smart and such a shitty thing to do at the same time.
I know. Well, we tried to get better. And so slowly we got better. Then I started doing ones for like TikTok that were purple. Twitch was purple. TikTok, I did it, whatever the color was. And so then it kind of became like a custom thing we were making. And we were doing maybe like 10K a month doing this stuff because we charged like $200 for one.
Wow. Did you ever get any like complaints? The first few that look like shit. Did anybody email you and go, yeah? So
a lot of people complained.
Yeah. Oh, that's like a Don King move, man. Do you remember Don King?
Oh yeah.
Hey, that's like a Don. Yeah. We'll get you one, no problem. And it's like, what the fuck?
Well, I didn't know. Like, I tend to do stuff like that. I want to know if there's a market first. I just didn't know. Get so many orders, and then from there, I was like, well, 10K is great. What can we do to make 100,000 a month that we don't work our asses off doing? This was right during COVID, right? And so it's like, you know what? I was trying to find some weights. I wanted to work out at home, like many of us during that period of time, right? Because gyms were closed down. Couldn't find weights anywhere. Yeah, and I was just like, man, if you could somehow find a way to get some weights from China or something, get them over here, you can make a fortune. Killing. Yeah. But then everybody's telling me, well, I mean, if it was that easy, people wouldn't be out of stock, And I'm like, well, let me look. I went on Alibaba, and looking around and found some guy that was making cast iron plates, and he was willing to, send them over. So at that time, I had a little savings, right? So I was able to invest a couple $100,000 just on a whim to get it. I love how you say a little savings. Well, all right, good. But I'm fortunate enough, to have been able to do that. It wouldn't have been as easy, right, if you didn't have the money. And so I imported. So basically, I bought these with no website, no nothing, and trusted first time. So he's like, okay, I'm saying. So I'm worried. I'm like, oh man, I made the website and everything, but I'm like thinking, what if he doesn't ship them? What if he just took the money? Then I'm thinking, well, what if the containers finally left? So I'm like, okay, well, what if I open the containers and there's no weights in there? And I'm worried about that. Well, what if the weights are in there, but they're pieces of shit? Right. So it's just a real stressful, but I did it. And it was like back September, maybe 2020, 2019, maybe. And put up the website. When they got to port, I put the website up, took pre-orders, and just, I think we did 1.9 million in 3 months. Wow. All right. So you just have to be one step ahead of everybody else, basically. You have that kind of mind. Unfortunately, not many of us do. Like, we can't, like, oh, shit, okay, how could I make money in times of crisis? But the truth of the matter is, that's exactly when you make money in times of crisis. Yeah. I mean, and a lot of people just thought, well, bigger companies would be doing it if it was that easy. But the reality is, a lot of times there's still opportunity. You just have to look. Don't let naysayers tell you, the big guys would have done that already, because I've carved my money out and I've carved something into an industry dominated by giants. I still carved out a niche, and you can do it. Very impressive. I really, I come from a family of contractors and longshoremen. So the philosophy that's ingrained in me and my brothers and my family is the only way to make money is to work your ass off, right? And then you find somebody like you who's very innovative and could like kind of read between the lines and get in that gray area. And it is possible to be very successful without busting your ass. Yeah. Well, I mean, and, like selling those weights was busting my ass. I mean, me and my wife really, I was on the phones and everything. Yeah. But as far as like, physically doing shit, 3PLs, the weights were going to 3PLs, they were getting shipped. So, it was cakewalk, from a labor standpoint. So we were lucky, That's fantastic, man. That really is. That's tremendous. So let's segue into, you originally started your YouTube channel for cryptocurrencies.
but now it's more of basically news, but it's news that you don't really find anywhere else. Like
Yeah,
you
controversial.
bring, you bring the stuff that mainstream media is not going to show you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you if that's your opinion. I that's what I try to do at least.
Well, no, I do. I've watched some of your videos. I've watched some of your shorts, and even your um what do you call it? Your Instagram and TikTok videos, and you do. And I like today you put up one where somebody was just going to work at his pickup truck, and there was these three guys, and they just were looking for a target, and one had a fully automatic weapon, I believe, right? I think it was an AK-47. The other two guys were armed, and
Yeah,
they just basically put a gun to this guy and stole his money, stole his truck, and did they execute him?
I believe so. Yeah, he didn't make it.
Yeah, and you never hear this on
Yeah,
mainstream media,
it's
and
over nothing. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You never hear. The only spot I heard this event was on your show, but you showed the footage. So it's like, well, why doesn't the mainstream media want to show this? And personally, and you'll probably agree, I think the mainstream media has a particular agenda, and if it doesn't fit their agenda, they're not showing it.
Oh,
What's your
absolutely. Just like the shooting, the mass shooting. Remember that one? I think I made it a few days ago about the mass shooting happened in Alabama. Some like
at
28 kids got,
Sweet
at,
16?
yeah.
Yeah,
And you don't see that really on the news. We hear about Nashville. Oh my God, you hear about Nashville. You hear every time it's a white person doing, and you hear it on the news, but these events, they're not as popular. And it confuses me and it frustrates me because I just want the reality of what's going on. Like the guy being held up on his driveway. I want to
mm-hmm.
know that kind of thing is happening. Like,
Right.
I don't want to be caught, with my proverbial pants down
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not aware of what the real world is like. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. It seems it seems their agenda is basically not only seems like their agenda is to put a wedge in between people. That's what it seems like to me, if that makes sense. So what I mean by that is if you continuously put police officers shooting and beating minority races, then those minority races and others for that matter are going to believe that that's the only thing that's going on. But they exclude the inner city crime that is blowing up in Chicago and New York City and in San Francisco, LA. They exclude all of that. And when you actually look at the stats, it doesn't reflect what the media shows. And what I find is that it sticks a wedge in between people of minority races and people who are not of minority races. And the truth of the matter is, we have more in common than what people think. And I am of the opinion that if we actually got together and realized that, then the government couldn't get away with half the stuff they get away with.
Oh, absolutely. I think kids are growing up thinking that they're more danger from the police
Right.
than they are from criminals. Like they have a warped sense of reality. And I'm not saying cops don't do crazy stuff. I think I cover crazy videos from cops sometimes too. But the
Mhm.
reality is that a lot of times the cops are the only thing standing in between and us and chaos in some of these inner cities, Los Angeles, some of this crazy shit going on. You see those shoplifting videos where mass groups of people just run into stores and just jack everything. I mean, it's like the Wild West. And this is
Yeah.
happening all over the country.
Yeah. And even last week, they had a teenage, I don't know what you want to call it, a teenage takedown of Chicago. And they had a girl that was beaten down by like, I don't know, 10 kids.
Oh, jeez.
They had, basically, which is looting and pillaging and rioting, and the media just completely ignored it. And the same kind of thing has happened in New York City because I work in New York City, and it's more about, uh, like I said, there seems to be a strict agenda, and especially, and you cover things like this, especially the trans movement, this whole trans community thing, and grooming your kids, which I think is absolutely absurd. And you've done a lot of videos on that, so I want to take your opinion on that actually.
Oh yeah, well, that whole situation is very frustrating. And the thing is, like, too, like I grew up with gay friends. I don't care if you want to dress a certain way or do whatever, but this this way that they're shoving it down your throats, and this way that you see on social media, that if you say anything that is slightly controversial against that sort of thing, right, then you get banned. And so I'm like, well, why is the powers that be, like of society, of government, or protecting, are so adamant at shoving this thing down, especially on platforms that are geared towards kids? Like TikTok is geared towards kids, and that's where these trans people flourished. Like the Bud Light guy that got all the sponsorships, he would have been nobody if it wasn't for TikTok. TikTok fueled his growth exclusively because, and so why? This guy is made by TikTok, right? He's propped up, and now he's getting sponsorships and stuff from Bud Light. And I'm not trying to be a hater. Bud Light can pick whoever they want. I don't care. But again, it's trying to normalize something that I don't think should be normal. If you want to be gay, be gay. If you want to wear a dress, wear a dress. But, I got a son that's 2. If he wants to do that thing, that's fine. But I'm not going to encourage him, and I'm not going to try to tell him, hey, this is normal.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more extreme. I don't think a man wearing a dress should be okay. I think there's a problem. And I think if you just, instead of identifying the problem and you just normalize it, then the problem just becomes greater and greater and greater.
That's true.
Right? It's almost, I'm just making an analogy in LA with the homeless problem. If you normalize it, Skid Row is literally miles long now. It's unbelievable and unbearable, and people are living California left and right. It's just an analogy where instead of addressing the problem, you accept it and embrace it. It just becomes, it's more like a virus. It becomes greater, greater. It's that show. From our generation, and anybody who thinks they're in the LGBT world has gone up and up and up and up and up all the way through Gen Z. Like us, it was like 3%. Now it's up to like 20-something%. It's ridiculous. And it seems to be the outcasts of society, or the young impressionable kids. What is what I mean by outcast. I don't know how long you've been living in the States, but when I was a kid, the outcasts were the goth, the vamp kids. They kind of didn't fit in with the jocks or the tough guys or anything like that. So they had this whole other kind of world to themselves, and they black lipstick and black hair and piercings everywhere, and listen to this crazy, music that nobody would listen to. And, they would dye their hair crazy colors. And now it kind of transitioned into the trans movement for kids. The thing is, though, the normalization of it, there has been a lot of pushback recently. We saw it with Bud Light. And I actually looked it up before we got here. There was actually a Congress passed. I don't know if you saw this. It's called Save Women's Sports Bill, passes in the House. And it's basically not letting men who think they're women, trans women, compete in women's sports anymore.
Yeah, I like that.
Me too. Because I don't know how far you've gotten into it. I know you've had some reaction videos to it. So why don't you give your opinion?
Well, I think it's crazy, and to touch back on the Bud Light thing, I heard that, like the lady that made the decision as far as getting the sponsorship for the TikTok, I don't know, Delaney, whatever that guy's name is.
Mulvaney,
Mulvaney, whatever. She was a diversity hire. Like they hired her, put her in charge. She was the first female executive of marketing, and her first decision she makes has cost the company $4 billion. So recently they put her on a leave of absence.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying, you shouldn't hire women. You should definitely hire women, but don't do diversity hire. You shouldn't hire somebody just because they're a specific gender or have a specific sexual preference or represent some sort of cause. You hire people based on their performance, their qualifications.
Absolutely.
And when you stop doing that, society's going to go to shit, and companies should be about profit before anything else. So what's going on here? It's cause marketing.
And we see it across the board. I mean, we see more women getting hired in police departments, fire departments, military, and they get, when the shit hits the fan, I'm not saying all women, just saying generally, they lower the standards so they could pass. And then when the shit hits the fan, I mean, there's videos upon videos of criminals just having their way with female cops, tackling them, throwing them around, so on and so forth, running away from them because they can't catch up, and all this nonsense. And I've no problem with women police officers, women executives, women firemen, but you should be able to perform the same tasks as a man. The standard should not be lowered, right?
Absolutely.
There's been a lot more pushback with the trans movement, but it doesn't seem what I'm trying to figure out, and I think I have an answer. What I'm trying to figure out is it's not just Bud Light. It's not just, drag queen story time. It's Disney. It's in the government. It's in all our movies. It's in Netflix shows. It's constant. There was one show. It was a zombie show. I forgot the name of the show. It was on HBO recently. And the third episode in, it's a pretty good show. And the third episode in is just two gay men having a relationship during a zombie apocalypse.
Yes. Oh, The
That's
Last
it.
of Us. That was a great show.
It is 100%. But I just skipped episode 3. And it had no bearing on the actual show.
Yeah.
Because they both died at the end of episode 3. And then the director actually came out and said I was just forcing a gay love affair on people that are watching. And like I said, it just seems to me that I don't understand why. Why? I mean, I have my opinion, but I don't understand why this agenda is pushed with such greatness. I mean, you can't get away from it. Nike, Gillette, even Coors and Heineken. Coors, and I believe in Heineken too, have had ads for the LGBTQ community and so on and so forth. But what I can't grasp is why. Why do you want to make men so feminine? That doesn't cause for a great community. It doesn't cause for a great country. It weakens the country.
Well, it makes you wonder, are these companies doing it because it's cause marketing and they can sell more Bud Lights or they can sell more whatever shoes if they, have these personalities attached to their brand? Or if there's some sort of money coming from somewhere that these companies are taking or being encouraged to take on these causes, like someone saying, listen, if you want to play ball, you got to take on this stuff. Because it seems like everybody kind of got on board at the same time, and everybody's doing this at the same time. And if it's about money, like, would they be doing this? Bud Light of all brands doing this. It just makes you wonder if there's something more going on, like something that's connecting it all, saying this is what we're pushing, and you're whether with us or against us, and all the companies are going with.
Yeah. No, I have my opinion as to why, but it's purely speculation. It has
I'd love to hear it.
Well, I honestly think that they want to make men weak, and they want to destroy the family dynamic, because men are generally the ones that fight back when something's out of order. And if you feminize men and you give them more of a feminine role, and if they don't even feel like a man in their own house, right, then they're not gonna, if you pull the masculinity out of them, then they're not gonna have this strong spirit to stand up and say, this is completely wrong. I'll give you an example, okay? I was growing up in Brooklyn. Well, this was probably a little bit before me, or when I was very, very young, maybe a toddler. And I think it was the late 70s, early 80s. And I'm just using this as an example, but there was a real estate company that showed a particular family a house, and the guys in the neighborhood didn't like that they showed this particular family a house in the neighborhood, and they burnt the real estate building down. Right? So it was basically, we have our community, leave us alone. And they stood up. Whether it was right or wrong, that's what it was. And it's been like that since the beginning, since the dawn of time. Men protected their community since the dawn of time. If not, and everything would be taken. And that is ingrained in us. But you break it down to your family. You're going to do anything to protect your family. And then if you have family, then that builds community. And if you have that, if you have that community, then those men are going to take care of that community. You have no community, family breakdown. You're pulling the masculinity out of people. And now you could literally just, I don't know, maybe shut down the country in the middle of a pandemic that gave you a cold, and nobody gives you a pushback. Or you could have a drag queen story time that your kids go to. I mean, if that happened in 1980, think about that. If that happened in 1980, they probably wouldn't have made it out alive. They would have had to have police, as first of all, nobody would have brought their kids there, But if they even attempted, the men in the community, whether it was, you know, Brooklyn, Chicago, whatever the case may be, would have done something extreme to get them out.
Oh, absolutely.
And that doesn't happen anymore. Perfect example. I don't know if you saw the documentary about Richard Rodriguez, the Night Stalker.
I think I have, yeah.
Well, toward the end, when they caught him, he knew he was on the run, and they actually knew who he was, and his face was in the paper, and he was in a Spanish neighborhood trying to get
Oh,
away.
yeah.
And the community
And the
realized
guys,
was
the community.
exactly, and the community realized who it was, so they kicked the shit out of him. And as a matter of fact, when the cops came, he ran to the cops because he was getting his ass beat, right? And the cops actually had to protect him from getting, you know, beat down. That doesn't happen anymore, and I think that's by design. That's just my opinion. I don't know. It's purely speculation.
I think you might have something there, you know, and I think it definitely has to do with political. It has a, you know, a tinge of socialism, you know, because you're trying to destroy kind of people's faiths, you know, and break down the traditional family unit.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
and
one thing I was watching, I don't know if you ever heard about, you know, like these laws they're passing to protect trans people, right? You know, because they're saying trans people are being assaulted and murdered at crazy rates and stuff like that. I saw this documentary, and it was this kid in Canada that was murdered. You know, it's a really sad story. The mother's talking, and so I'm like, huh, wow, because I grew up, you know, around a lot of people, you know, whatever. I never saw people assaulting gay people or trans people, you know. So I'm wondering, is this really the reality out there? And we'll come to find out, the kid, you know, had loved pretending to be a girl, even though he had a, you know, and would go out with these guys in the car and start blowing them, doing whatever. Then maybe the guy find out he got a schlong, and then, you know, they would fight or whatever. So that's what led to the murder. The year before, he had got shot 6 times doing the same damn thing. And now they're passing these laws that you can't, you know, if you say something mean, that's hate speech. If you assault somebody, that's a hate crime. It's like they're trying to force you to accept that a guy dressed as a woman is a woman. And if you have a problem with it and you're not willing to bang or take her out a date or whatever, then you're a piece of shit because you don't want to.
Right.
And that's just crazy to me.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. You're a bigot if you're not attracted to a guy dressed up as a girl. But you know, a lot of people also, it's very easily defended, and people forget. Like, for example, this drag queen story time thing. You never see trans men. You never see women that want to be men going and reading to kids.
That's true.
It's only men, which leads me to believe that it's some kind of fetish or perversion, right? Because let's face it, I mean, when it comes to fetishes and perversions, I mean, men take the cake. I have interviewed several fetish models, and the stories they've told me about what men want just blow me away. Like, I thought I was a freak until I spoke to these girls. I mean,
oh my God.
Crazy. So, and the other thing is, as far as like, you know, trans women in girl sports, you never see trans men going into men's sports and dominating. That doesn't happen. Period. End of story. Never, ever happens. No girl becomes a man and it goes into the NBA and wreck shit. It does not happen. And the other thing
not only doesn't they wreck shit, but they don't even can compete. They're not even reaching a competitive level.
Yeah. And on the trans women's side, only the mediocre guys are transitioning and moving over to women's sports. The elite guys that can be competitive in that top spot, they're not. And these are all things that are not even an argument, and nobody brings them up. Nobody pulls them out. It's unbelievable how easy it is to break this argument down, and only a small percentage of people are doing, like Matt Walsh or Michael Knowles. You know, they break it down relatively easy. Because it is that easy, but nobody brings these easy facts up.
Oh yeah, and talking about it puts you on the fringe. You're suddenly. I had an article I think published out about me, you know, talking about when a Jim Carrey thing about suing me, and they called me conspiracy theory. Now, like conspiracy theorist. So now I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm like, I never knew that the kind of material I was covering was worthy of being called conspiracy. But that's you're labeled, so they can push you to the fringe and say you're just cuckoo. You know, you ain't got to listen to this guy. He's crazy. When in reality, you're just asking basic questions.
Why don't you go into that? What happened with you and Jim Carrey in the lawsuit?
Oh yeah. So I just put that video that came out from a radio show. They're showing the list of people that went to the Epstein Island. And now, again, this full list has never been released. Like, there's different lists. There's a list of people that were on the flight. There's the black book. And then there's a bunch of clients that never got released through court, right? So it could be anybody on that list. But anyway, I released the list, got like 10 million views in shorts, maybe 3 million views in long form. And suddenly, Jim Carrey, of all the people on the list, Jim Carrey sends me a cease and desist and says, quotes that, it's hurting his job opportunities. It's tarnishing his reputation. I guess he's building a damages claim, right? So he's saying, I'm not being able to get jobs, and so he can quantify it. But anyway, so I refused to do anything, of course, and that kind of died. I think that by the time I released that information, so many people got riled up about it, ended up everywhere, that it wouldn't be even worth it, for him.
The one thing that social media did that I am grateful for is destroyed the movie star. Those guys back in the 90s that they thought were untouchable in the early 2000s, like a Jim Carrey or so on and so forth, like a Will Smith or Chris Rock. Actually, I'm on Chris Rock's side, but more like a Will Smith, where these guys that thought they were untouchable, is you don't have this movie star, superstar quality anymore. And they're not untouchable. They're not making the money they used to make. They're not making the movies that are entertaining that they used to make because for whatever reason, movies are dying. And the real rock stars are becoming guys like yourself who are on social media and speaking their mind and talking about what's actually happening, when you have Hollywood stars that have to be in this bubble. Otherwise, they won't get their job opportunities that they want.
Oh yeah. Well, not guys like me, but guys like Joe Rogan for sure.
Well, yeah. Well, you're on the fringe. Let's face it. I mean, you're one of them. You're just, yeah. But guys like Rogan, and Rogan calls them out all the time. He calls out Hollywood all the time, and that's one good thing because, but at the same time, it has hurt creativity, if you will. So like, creative movies and creative shows, I understand that Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime have good shows, but when you start, I need some reality in my fantasy, and I think most of us do, right? Like if I look at a show and it's based on like a Star Wars show, right? It's like a Star Wars Return of the whatever, and a guy does something that a man wouldn't do, but he does in that show. And even though it's about, galaxies far away, I go, a man would never do that. Right. Or a woman that would react in a masculine way. A woman would never do that. But they, whereas years ago, they would make sure that those human nature elements were in the movie, even though the movie was sci-fi or fiction or so on and so forth. When now it's like a full agenda about pushing a particular movement, and you see it in the Netflix shows and so on and so forth. But like I said, it's kind of a catch-22 because you don't have these superstars anymore that could thrive on their talent, right? You don't have a Robert De Niro anymore. You don't have a Robert Downey Jr. anymore. They're gone,
Oh, you have no idea how much I agree with you. It's insane. Like, and I love movies that bring reality, because to me, reality brings immersion, right? Mm-hmm. And I can do a superhero movie like, what's the one with the woman, Superwoman or whatever? Wonder Woman. Like, if you tell me she's a superhero, she's extraterrestrial, whatever.
Different story, right?
But these situations where it's normal thing and some 90-pound chick is kicking everybody's ass, it kind of brings me out. And it's not about just women. It's just in general, movies lack reality. It's become such like a little fantasy world. Yeah. And Netflix and Prime have started pushing shows based strictly on agenda. Yeah. And that reduces the quality of films, because it's like a diversity hire for movies. So they're pushing movies based on who are the actors and directors that, are going to be cool, and it's, oh man, I don't even know why I'm still subbed to all those places, but I got Netflix and
yeah, listen, Netflix has great documentaries, and me and my wife tend to watch the documentaries, and unfortunately, that's what you have to subscribe to. Their movies are horrible. Some of their shows are good, but even when the shows are good, it always goes in a direction. The best example I can give, and I always give this example, is the Star Wars example. When the original Star Wars, when it was Luke Skywalker and it started in the late 70s, you had 3 movies that led Luke Skywalker to become a Jedi Knight, right? It took him that long. It was a journey. And it's basically a young man becoming a man that is responsible. It's the man's journey. He has to go through trials and tribulations to realize what he can do, what he can't do, what his limitations are, what his responsibilities are, so on and so forth. It's a man's journey. So, and then the villain, right, is basically the villain, who is Darth Vader, is basically a man's fears that he has to confront. And every man that knows this, that has risen to the occasion, realizes that this is what a man's journey is. And that's what Darth Vader represents, like the fear that you have to go through in order to become a man, right? So then they make the remake, which is fine, and they put a girl in as the lead role, which is fine. But in the first movie, before she even has one lesson on how to be a Jedi, she beats the villain, which is Darth Vader's grandson. She beats him in a Jedi sword fight. She never had one lesson, beats him, and then after she beats him, she looks for Luke Skywalker to teach her how to be a Jedi. And I'm like, how does that make sense at all? That doesn't make sense. You just beat that's like beating up the school bully and your parents go, you know what? You got to take karate. Like, why? I just kicked the shit out of the bully. Why would I have to take karate? Yeah. And it just makes no sense. And it's fucking awful. And movies used to be fantastic. Now to find a decent one, it's just trash. Right. But
have you seen 000 on Prime?
No, what is that?
You gotta watch it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Just 000. Okay. When you get a chance, watch greatest movie ever.
Is it spelled out ZERO?
000? Yeah,
okay,
in word.
I'll check it out. Okay,
I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, because I need something good actually. And another thing you've done some videos on, and is the modern women and today's society and Western society. You've done a lot of response and reaction videos to Fresh and Fit, or I forgot the other one, the goofy white kid. I forgot the name of the show.
Now I gotta know, who's the goofy white kid?
The goofy white kid. He has a show similar to Fresh and Fit, except that he's a goofy white kid that does it. What the hell is the name of the show? I can't remember the name of the show. But anyway, you've done some.
It's one of those where he walks up to random women on the street.
No. When they have a conversation with women sitting at like a table.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know who you're talking about now.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know his name, but I know
I think goofy white kid. It's appropriate. I like it.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. What is the idea of taking young women, and this has been going on for several generations in Western society, and telling them at a very young age, don't ever settle for a man. Don't rely on a man. You could do whatever a man can do. There's always another man coming, so on and so forth. And basically what this has led to is a generation of girls that truly believe that men are worthless. Mm-hmm. And then when you go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it happens at the same time as what you were saying before. With the feminization of men. So it's both things happening
exactly,
at the same time.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Go ahead, please.
No, and then it's unbelievable how you could show them stats and give them examples as why men are very important in society, and they just refuse to believe it, even though they've been spoon-fed this crap. But you could literally show them and go, no, look at this. You wouldn't have an infrastructure. You wouldn't have a military. You wouldn't have a police force. The first thing that happens if you get assaulted or as a crime, you call the police and you automatically assume that it's a man, and then they pull out this toxic masculinity phrase constantly, and they just kind of throw phrases around: toxic masculinity, narcissism, anxiety, and they just throw it all in, even though they don't know what it is. You're insecure, right? I hate this expression that they use is little penis envy, little penis energy, right? Small penis energy. That's it. That annoys the shit out of me. I don't understand that. I have small penis energy because I drive a nice car, or because I'm very ambitious, or because I have money and I bought something nice, like, or because I go to the gym and I work out constantly. It's like the more masculine you are, the more you're labeled toxic or small penis energy.
Oh yeah, and all of the kind of rules about don't body shame and don't do this, don't do that. It applies to everyone but men.
Yeah,
Because those
you're right. Yeah,
groups are absolutely that's the first thing they'll do is belittle your physical appearance
right.
and your dick, whatever they can do. But then they'll turn around, they're the first ones to be high and mighty. Yeah, it's
Right.
very frustrating. And there's just not a place in the world today where I feel like men can be, safe and talk about your problems. There's not a kind of a way of like, people don't come to you like, okay, you can be fixed, you have problems. It's more like you're evil and you were born a man, so you're born wrong and you don't fit into this world anymore, which is very frustrating. And I feel like it's a symptom of all of these things that happen with like the guy that shot up in California and stuff, and nobody really cares about it. These are things that could be fixed very easily by not constantly pointing the finger and saying men are the cause of all evil.
Right. No, actually, 100%. I actually had a forensic psychologist on, and we talked about mass shootings and why there is this huge upswing in mass shootings, and at the same time a huge downswing in serial killers. But it was specifically a huge upswing in mass shootings. And if it's a lot of it is young white men, the majority of them, like a large majority, like 98% of them, and they can't handle life, masculinity. They're confused. They can't handle rejection. Girls don't understand them. Girls don't know them. And a lot of them come from single mother homes, so they don't have a masculine man around. You didn't have this many mass shootings when we were kids. And I truly believe it's because you had a man in the house to show you how to deal with these things. Right?
Absolutely.
Like, for example, like if I got into a fight at school, right? And I came home and told my father I got into a fight, one of two things would happen. He would say, if you don't go back tomorrow and beat the shit out of him, you're going to get it worse when you get home. He's like, believe me, you should fear me more than you should fear him. Right? So you were forced to defend yourself. Or, all right, we're going into boxing. We're joining, the boxing club. You got to learn how to defend yourself. When a mom does it, she has this instinct to protect. So she's going, I'm going to talk to the principal. I'm going to talk to the teacher. I'm calling this kid's parents. And it just makes things worse for the kid, because now it becomes a laughing stock that his mom has to defend him for everything. And it just makes it worse and worse and worse. Girls reject. No, every guy gets rejected. That's part of life. And of course, as when you're young, you have to deal with it. But if you don't have a man around to show you and teach you, I truly believe that when you are, and then at the same time, like you said, these young men are told that they're crap from the minute they're born, right? That then they're suppressing these feelings. Let me rephrase that. They're not suppressing them. They're embellishing them. How can I say this? They're thriving in them secretly, if that makes sense. And it just becomes this explosion, and men are generally violent by nature. And then they grab a gun and go, I'm going to go kill these people that don't like me. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Instead of learning how to tunnel it somewhere else, or how to deal with issues like a man would, and then we are getting these upswing of mass shooters. And I don't know, Gad, what is your take on it?
No, I agree completely. And it's funny because I was just telling my wife earlier, my son had a little bit of a fever. He's just like, maybe we got to take him to the hospital. The internet says when it gets to this. And I was like, hey, let's just get a towel. Let's give him a little Tylenol and see what happens. It's because if you had him snuggled, and that also increases the, and so now he's fine, right? And I was telling him, like, man, if it was just you, this would be the third time we would go to the hospital. When each time we didn't go, because I was like, well, listen, he hurt his finger. I was like, well, you gotta give it a second, see if it's actually broken. It wasn't. It was fine,
right?
So it's like, and I don't want to say I don't care, because I really do, but I'm just a little bit more calm. I'm a little bit more like, he can handle, a little bit, like I've been a kid.
Reasonable.
Yeah. So, and I would imagine like this has an influence on a child. And if you have this kind of attitude, by the time he's 2, you already been in the hospital 3 times unnecessarily. And then what happens by the time he's 16, like he can't handle anything himself. And just like you explained with school too, that would be happening as well. A father understands what a son is going through, and you kind of need there to be the guidance, and sometimes to be tough love, to tell him the reality, to teach him the skills that he's going to need, because soon the world is getting tough for dudes. It's not easy out there. So you need to know what you're getting into. Nobody is going to help you out there. Nobody's going to give you a hand. If anything, people are going to be pushing you back.
Right. 100%. I want your take on this too. This seems to be a trend going on, and I know you addressed some of this in your videos. Women don't seem to be choosing the best men to marry or procreate with anymore. They seem to be choosing the guy that pretty much will puts them on a pedestal and lets them get away with whatever. Even when they're 30, 32, and they've been through God knows how many guys already, right? They tend to choose the guy that's kind of like the beta, the weak one, the whatever. And then they, I don't know how I got so lucky, guys will say, and you did so much, you could do so much better than me. And this guy that really doesn't have much self-confidence. I see it all the time. I see it like every day. And that's why you see so many pretty women with guys that are not as attractive, or you see women with guys that like kind of like, they have a regular job, but they're not, the women aren't satisfied with their regular job. So they'll emasculate them behind closed doors and in front of people. And they're choosing this kind of man. Whereas years back, especially during, our grandparents' time, the women chose the best possible guy they could possibly get. Or at least your father had a big role in what guy you chose, right? At the very least, you had to come to the door and meet your father before he took you out on a date, before this young man took you out on a date. And then he judged it. He judged that guy. Now that's considered like caveman stuff. Like that's considered like, oh my God, really? I gotta, it's considered
heresy.
So why do you think that is happening? Why do you think you see these young girls? I see it all the time.
And then they ultimately are dissatisfied.
Right.
They're never going to be happy long term. And you see them, this is the ones that are doing the OnlyFans on the side.
Yeah.
Doing these real skeevy stuff. And if the guy got to be cool with it, so they got to find the beta dude that'll accept it. She's got the side dude, the other boyfriend live in, or she's doing the OnlyFans, or she's a sex worker, and that's fine. And it's just, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The whole philosophy is very weird. I'm very lucky, honestly, I found my wife. She's from Poland, so, she was working 2 jobs when I met her. I knew she's down to earth. We never argue. We don't raise our voices to each other. So I knew like, this is the one. Right. And I think I did a good job. But again, she's foreign, she's from Poland. American women, especially, are just like you said. And I don't know, man. Like I said, I'm kind of pro sticking to yourself, being alone. If I hadn't found my wife, I'd be single right now.
Yeah.
Because of this, it's just too dangerous. And the way society is built, it's to take away money from dudes. So if you're out there and you're single, you're just going to get screwed over time and time again.
100% right. I don't think modern day women, especially, or both men or women, but especially women, I don't think they realize how they damage generation after generation if they pick the wrong guy. Right. I don't think they realize it. If you pick the wrong guy, if you pick a very weak man and you have a son, that kid's first taste of who is masculine in the house is a very weak person. And all he's going to do is turn out just like dad did. You're giving him the blueprint, right? And then what happens is he's going to come home with a woman just like his mother, dominating and degrading and selfish and so on and so forth. And then they wind up hurting, not liking each other, the mother and the daughter-in-law. But also, what happens too is one of the ways wealth is built in this country is after generation after generation, right? And if the divorce rate is insane and you have to take money from men like that, you're not even realizing that you're depriving your next generations of possibly having wealth. right? Well, there are a lot of guys that are kind of beta and that are very innovative and so on and so forth, and they could probably maybe amass a nice amount of money or hardworking and whatnot. But if the wife leaves him and takes his money, and he has to start over at age 35 or 40, right? And then he has children that he can't see, and he only sees them every other weekend. There's no respect, there's no discipline, and there's also, what can I pass down to him? What can I pass down to my children? Everything was taken from me. My house. I can't discipline my kids. I can't see my kids. My money was taken from me. My assets were taken from me. And I don't think modern day women realize, when you choose a man and you don't respect that man, and how easy it is to get divorced. I don't think they realize how it hurts generation after generation, right? Because even if you go ahead, sorry, let me get your take on it.
No, you're absolutely right. Please continue. I agree. Wealth is built with families,
Right.
family businesses, discipline within families. Sons that are not raised well by their fathers with discipline are not going to maintain or grow that wealth. The saying, weak men raise, or strong men, strong times make weak men, you get the point. Like, easy times make weak men, and hard times make strong men. So there's a cycle. But if you have a family unit where the father worked hard to amass wealth, teaches the son from an early age how to manage the business, the value of money, these kind of teachings, he can pass it on to his family and his family after that. But when society is breaking up families at this rate, you're never going to get 3 generations down. The whole thing's going to be scattered.
Right. 100%. And I think it, again, I might be this crazy conspiracy person, but I think that's, part of the possibility is that, you're kind of keeping the wealth with that percentage, and the middle class don't have this chance. Right. And I think breaking down the family unit, community, pulling masculinity, making women thinking they're more masculine than they really are. I think this basically just keeps, you're like on a paradoxical treadmill. You go nowhere fast. You're not really building anything. If anything, you're starting from scratch, or you're not even starting from scratch. You're starting in the red when you have everything taken from you.
Well, I wouldn't be where I am now without my wife. She takes care of the kids. She, does everything. She gets to stay home. She respects me. She makes my life easier. I get to focus on work, and we have an understanding. Like, she doesn't go off spending crazy amounts of money. Like, she makes me a better person, and she doesn't stress me out. That's the biggest thing. She supports me, listens to my problems when I'm complaining about Amazon or some shit. And this really helps. It makes all of the difference. If I was single, I'd be spending money at bars, worrying about dating. Oh my God, I spent half my life going out partying, trying to find some broad.
Right, 100%. It is true masculinity and true femininity complement each other. Naturally, that's how it's supposed to be. That's what you're describing. And the more masculine a man is, you're a better businessman than I am, but we're both very masculine, right? So a hyper masculine man is only going to want a feminine woman. And my wife is the same way as you. My wife is very supportive, and she's takes care of the home, and I worked 12 hours today. I came home and I did my podcast, and my food was waiting for me, and but we've been together for 12 years, and my food was waiting for me, and the house is clean, and the laundry's done. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have to do my part too, because she unfortunately does have to work. But she's a hairdresser, which is another, feminine kind of job a woman would have. And then when you have that, when you do complement each other properly, you can grow together as a family, right? I mean, half the reason that I'm trying to push this YouTube and podcast so hard is so that I can make more money, is so that we can have a healthy life together. And she supports me. She doesn't want to be on. Forget it. She don't even want to have a finger in the camera. No, but my bodybuilding channel, I've had boots at bodybuilding shows. She made all the shirts for me. She made all the merch for me, and that's greatly appreciated. And that's what a wife is supposed to do. If you have a woman that is degrading and selfish and emasculates her husband, that's the kind of guy that she's going to attract,
Oh yeah,
and that kind of the kind of guy that believes that that's all he deserves. And it
absolutely.
just makes matters worse.
Oh yeah, my wife was making those plaques with me, man.
Yeah.
Before we had a kid,
Yeah.
she was there trying, and
That's great.
she was the one working at the time, right before they cut COVID, and she'd come home from work, and I'd have those stacked up, and I'd be like, man, I'm having a real hard time, and she still, like, 6 o'clock in the evening, she would help me do them, and she didn't want to quit her job for the longest time. And then I finally was like, listen, I'm telling you, you quit your job, we're not going to have a problem. She said, well, what if in a year, what if in 2 years? I'm like, I'm telling you, don't worry about it. And, since we've had a good life since,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
really lucky, honestly. The past 3 years has just been incredible for me.
That's fantastic, man. I'm actually really, really glad to hear it. And I think more people need to, I mean, I know you have a really big platform, but more people need to watch your show. More people need to learn from you, which is one of the main reasons why I asked you to come on, so we could talk about how you established your success and how you established your businesses and how you are really growing in your YouTube and podcast endeavors. And I think more young men need to look up to and study people like you, guys like you, right? And realize that this is what true masculinity is. You need to go out and get what's yours, take care of your family, and stand on something that means something to you. And it's true. And that is what you are. And that is one of the reasons why I reached out to you. The one great thing about having your own podcast, especially interview show or, interview YouTube channel, is you get to ask people that you admire to come on, not people that you have to. Like if you worked at CBS and you got to interview some shithead politician that you really don't want to, right? But the large majority, I think every one of the people that I've reached out to, I've admired in one way, shape, or form or another. And we're talking all different sides of the spectrum, right? But it happens to be very true. So, sir, I'm very happy that you came on and we're able to talk and have this great discussion. And I just wish you continued success.
Well, thank you.
And you're very welcome. It's not because you're Italian. It's because I like you.
I appreciate it. And honestly, like I see you doing big things. Honestly, like from nothing to success is just the tiniest change, especially with YouTube. Like one moment I'm not doing good, then I do a few things, and it's like boom, it's a complete night and day. And it really does. It's a ratio. The more you think about it, the more you're going to do. I just spend a lot of time just thinking about random videos, watching videos, just trying to think of things, and then something will come up like, oh man, this is going to do really well, and I need to do it right away. Just like the list Epstein, I was like, the Epstein list is going to do really good, or the Walmart checkout video, or just other things. I'm like, this is going to do really well. I put it out there, and then it's just like boom. And then once you get going, the motivation is easy. That comes. So just keep at it. I'm telling you, 3 months from now, you could have 1 million subscribers. You never know.
All right. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. I'm going to let you go. And once again, I'd like you to thank you, Vincent Briatore. His YouTube channel is Vincent Briatore TV. And you also have your own website, vincentbriatore.com, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that's VINCENTBRIATORE.com.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
We'll be in touch. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.